Okay, I forgot it loops itself there. Everybody, welcome. You might notice the sound is a little different for this show. I'm not sitting on the couch like normally, nor I'm upstairs because I'm in a different time slot to record today. The family is downstairs using the main area, and I've got the window open and the neighborhood's buzzing, and so you might hear some things in the background, but we're gonna plow on through it. We're gonna keep on going. Um, so welcome to another great episode of the show. It's a warm one today. It's super warm finally here in Ohio. We got springtime coming in, and it's been raining and raining and raining, and finally today we had just a nice day, and that's why the neighborhood is buzzing, as you can tell. And I want to mention a couple things before we get into the real good stuff in the show here. If you've been following along, then you'll know that I just recently had my 1000th video on YouTube, which is a pretty big accomplishment for me. I've been pounding away at those YouTube videos with the games and with the podcasts and with the reviews, and I made a thank you video for everybody, and I want to thank everybody again here for for being a part of everything that I've done to get to this point, because it's really been a trip to get this far. And within a very short time, we are going to be moving from hobby to making some profit and being something kind of respectable, I guess, which is kind of funny for me. But the podcast itself, if I've got my forecasts right, will begin to be profitable this week, which is pretty awesome. I've been following the numbers, and the numbers have been climbing and climbing and climbing. And so we're making it. We're finally making it to the top. Um, but yeah, so what do we got today? Today is not a typical show. Today we have a guest, and we have stuff to talk about with that guest, because what else would you do if you have a guest? We're just not going to leave him in the wings there. Um, this is a person I've known for quite a long time. He's part of a writing team that has written the new novel. It's up on, it's going to be out May 5th. Put your pre orders in now as you hear this show. The book is called Jack&V, or no, V and Jack. It's V and Jack, right? Nope, it's Jack&V. He's nodding and he's shaking his head in the room over there. I had it right the first time. And I've been practicing it for like a few days, and that's why I got it wrong. Because if you practice too hard, you mess it up, right? So Jack&V, I'm a couple chapters in. I don't want to spoil anything for anybody, but we're going to talk about it a little bit. Let me bring him in. Welcome, Rob, from the writing team of Evan Essex, here to Spider Does Things, the show.
All right. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Definitely. It's good to talk to you. I have not talked to you in a very long time.
Yeah.
We've seen each other many times over the years. I was at your son's wedding, I think, the last time I might have seen you. And it's been a while since then.
Yeah. Sure has. Well, hey, I wanted to say too, good job on this podcast. It's amazing. I'm not surprised at all why it's growing exponentially like this. Um, it's like you're like the FDR podcasts, I'm sorry, the fireside chats. It's so amazing that it's so personal and down to earth, and yet you're this avant-garde artist, you know, and so you kind of bring a progressive tone and sensibility to, I think, a great American tradition.
I appreciate that. When I first broke into this, a little bit of a tangent before we get into the good stuff. When I first started doing radio stuff, I thought, because I wasn't on my own show, I was brought in on another show, and I thought I had to be a radio personality. I had to have like a voice, do
Oh
things,
yeah,
be wacky and stuff. And it worked for a little while, but the more I got into it, the more you have conversations with people rather than just firing off questions and things and trying to be a character, the more they kind of appreciate things and they open up and you get some real good talk. And I've met a lot of great people just having conversations this way. And so even though this edition of the show hasn't had a guest yet, you're the first, I still feel like whether the people are here talking to me or not, I'm having a conversation with the people. I'm not
hmm
just talking at them or talking to them or presenting things to them. We're together. We're having a good time. We're talking about stuff, and nobody wants to hear just a bunch of showmanship all the time. If they want to do that, they'll watch Netflix or something. But so yeah, I appreciate that. That gives me a boost right in
yeah.
there, right in the feels there.
It feels warm and real. I really appreciate it. I enjoy it, and also you're so funny. You have an
I
incredible sense of humor.
I always thought I was funny, but people kind of go back and forth on that. So it's always nice to hear that my efforts there have been uh, a positive. Um, and I know it's probably a lot different interacting now on this level from the times we interacted in the past because I've we grow in life. We grow, we
Sure.
become slightly different people, and I feel like I'm the same but different, and I'm advancing into the best form of myself, I
Yeah.
guess.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. A few weeks ago, you on one of your episodes, you called yourself an old man. I'm like, oh boy, if Greg's an old man, what am I?
It puts things into perspective when everybody gets their ages out there. Just like, oh man. Um, we're gonna get into some of that later too, because we're gonna get into some talk about some of the concepts from the book and things
Mm,
afterwards and real world stuff. But let's start with the book. Um, the book, like I said, I purposely only read the first couple chapters. I'm usually like, I'll read huge novels in a week or less, just because I'm just voracious for knowledge most of the time. But I was like, I don't want to come on here and then spill a bunch of spoilers and just ask a bunch of like, what's this all about? And it's actually the most important part of the book, and everybody's like, oh well, no, I don't got to read the book no more because
yeah.
we talked about it. So I've kept my information stream kind of narrow on it.
hmm
Um, and let me ask you a couple things first about how did this all come together? I know you're a creative person. I'm a creative person. It's kindred spirit kind of thing, so I kind of have an idea
hmm
of the stream of consciousness there. But how did that all fit together into the idea that you wanted to write this and you and the team? What brought all that into a concrete, this is what we want to do?
Yeah. We started this book 9 years ago, and it kind of coincided with starting. I started a master's in data science, and as I started to learn more and more about AI, artificial intelligence, I just realized, oh no, oh, this is going to change so much. This is going to change everything. It's going to turn our society upside down. And back in 2016, this was long, long before the Chat GPT moment. So AI was sort of like a thing that had always like not delivered. It had
Mm,
always been oversold. But going through that degree program and learning how to build models and stuff, and this was, 2016, a long time ago. These things were
mm,
nothing compared to what they are now. But I could tell, like, yeah, this is going to create more societal change in the next 2 decades than all the change of human society going back as far as time goes. And so, and people just aren't ready. And so we need to start telling stories. We need to start building these worlds in our imagination and um, through books and conversation before we're just completely turned upside down by this technology.
You know, that's a really good point that I hadn't really considered is the effect the way we retain information is more effective in story form than it is just in classroom form almost. Like I can go out and ask 12 people, what do you know about the Matrix? And they'll quote endlessly stuff from the movie series and all this other stuff and say, oh yeah, and then that's happening today. We've got all this stuff going on. But you go out and you ask those same people about AI and machine technology, and they won't know as much about it. Not because they
Right.
just aren't intelligent people. It's just because the movie told them a story about how this stuff worked. And they remember
Yeah.
that because it was interesting. It was exciting. It grabbed their attention. Whereas just reading news articles and stuff, it just kind of goes over their heads. So people kind of they don't think about it the same way if it isn't framed uh, within a fictional context
Mhm.
almost where they can kind of see it in their head, so to speak.
Yeah. And I think that's because, no, you never hear about people having an emotional experience with a textbook,
Mm,
but you sure do. Pe- People have deep emotional experiences with great novels and great songs. And yeah.
mm. Um, the the two main characters in the book, of course. Well, there's where I'm at in chapter two. I guess you could include two more main characters, which I don't want to talk about them yet because I think that's something that the reader will want to find out because that's interesting to me.
Mhm.
That's an interesting section. But the two main characters are Jack and V, of course, and we meet V first,
Mhm.
and we get introduced to Jack a little bit later. How, without giving away too much of the characters themselves, how did the ideas for the characters come into play? What pushed you along to kind of think, okay, this V is going to be this kind of a person. She's had this kind of a history, and Jack is going to be this kind of a person, and they're going to interact in some way. Was it something where they kind of evolved naturally, or did you have to start building blocks a little bit?
Um, and by the way, anything you want to talk about in chapters 1 and 2, I think is fair game because there's 9 chapters. So yeah, feel free. But
We might get into that extra stuff then.
yeah, if you want to, it's fine. Yeah, uh, it'll give the readers a little bit more meat to
Mm,
grab onto. But um, the I think I've been frustrated with this last decade of storytelling when it comes to heroines. I have a hard time finding stories where, say, the very best of womanhood or the divine feminine that I've experienced in my own life comes through in a popular story about a female hero, whether it's Wonder Woman or these whoever they have in the Marvel movies, and all, or even like movies like Atomic Blonde, where okay, that woman is badass, that woman can fight. Um, but I feel like the stories have stripped away a great deal of this superpower of woman, like the empathy, um, the ability to be tenacious and also nurturing. and I feel like our society as a whole kind of has to masculinize a woman in order for her to be a really tough physical hero in a story. And so I've been super, super blessed in my life to have some really close platonic friendships with women over the last, decades. And when like, I noticed also that if I talk about like some experience I had, in India or, with on a business, venture or, uh, in Latin America with something related to health and well-being. Uh, I find men to be suspicious, and it's like pattern matching. They're like they want to say, "Oh, you must have had a crush on this person, or you must have hoped it would evolve into something romantic." What's the other one? Or it's transactional in some way. And I'm so tired of hearing that crap. And I feel like it, along with the evolution of technology, and as we're coming into an age of abundance, I think that we should also be thinking about coming into an age of connection where we can let go of the tired old tropes, the battle of the sexes, the more primitive aspects of our society have, I think, arisen just in the last 10,000 years, in this age of warfare. And kind of where I'm pulling that from is from the research of Ryan Eisler. She has a book called The Chalice and the Blade.
Mm.
And starting in the 1970s, she really started to uncover a lot of the archaeological evidence that had been buried mainly by British archaeologists after World War II
Mm.
that kind of um, tells a completely different story of the Neolithic period as one of where there was no battle of the sexes and there was no great inequality in societies, that people pretty much all lived in the same kind of house, and even religious houses were they were just like a normal house, just everybody used that one in common for for spiritual ceremony. So this whole egalitarian society, it seems like all across Anatolia and perhaps much much further into all throughout Eurasia and North Africa, we may be finding with the lidar and other um, non-invasive archaeological type techniques that are emerging, we may find that goodness, there's hundreds of these cities that used to exist and they don't have walls around them, and there's no evidence of warfare, and all of this, what people think of as the Hobbesian nature of humanity or man's tendency to fight, wars, and for there to be scarcity, is all very, very recent, you know, just within the last 10,000 years. And there may be a million or 2 years before that, where there were very well organized and highly cultured cities, um, and absolutely no evidence of any of the ills that we face, and I think that what I'm trying to say, long story short, is that we have an opportunity and right in front of us to go back to that way because we can eliminate scarcity through the superabundance that's coming through, AI powered robotics and automation.
It's interesting because every not every single year, but every couple years, you get a new historical article or archaeological find that they say, "Oh yeah, back in such and such time, male and female were on this level of equality, and they were on this level of their roles were this, and they weren't defined as this." And people are surprised. They're like, "Oh, really? Well, I always thought that it was this because it's always been suppression and this and this and this." And you make a good point that you don't see a lot of that in ancient historical sources. I'm a huge fan of ancient Samaria and Mesopotamia and
Mm,
a lot of the the way that civilization began and because I'm also a big fan of some off the wall stuff. I'm a fan of ancient astronaut theory and things like that. I can't say 100% any of that stuff is true, of course, because the evidence may be there, it might not. But it's an interesting thing to me, and it's such a different picture to what
mhm.
evolved over time.
Yeah,
You had a level of cooperation between. I wouldn't even call them social classes per se. It was just, well, you do this kind of work, and but that's symbiotic with this kind of work, which is
exactly.
symbiotic with this kind of work up and down the whole chain. And it all worked together to make sure the society functioned. And now it's more like, well, you're a minimum wage worker, so you're just nobody. And this is $1 billion CEO and he's everything. And it's an entirely different viewpoint for how it was in ancient times and seeing the shift over that time is both fascinating and it's kind of disheartening too because it's been such a long time for us to get from there to here when in the age of the planet and in the age of civilization as a whole it's been such a tiny time span.
Yeah.
It's we think of time spans like, oh, a millennia is such a long time, but it compared to the amount of time the species has been here, it's not really. It's everything has changed in such a short amount of time. Anthropology, as far as anthropology goes, and all that,
Yep.
and so you kind of wonder if you with the acceleration, if it's accelerating too far to a point where there's no way to go back.
And so that's really the crux of the story is like, how do we build a space opera adventure that is thrilling, at times violent, um, takes you through this broad range of extremes. Takes you to the edge of your known experience and maybe a little beyond that, um, so that you live this vicariously. You experience this future, which is just so loaded with new tech. It feels outlandish. It feels improbable. But in my view, as a data scientist, someone who works with AI, if anything, our timeline is too long. We're setting things out too far into the future. It'll come faster than we even dared
Mhm.
plot, 9 years ago when we started. And so, and what I'm trying to, at least raise the possibility that there's a chance that if we do this right, yes, there will be some upheaval. And, the prequel that I'm working on now is set in the 2040s, and it takes the reader through what I see as that major, global upheaval of when by 2040, 2042, that's when just everything is going to be upside down. There just isn't going to be any more paid work. And we could descend into chaos, or we can rise into what I call artisan life, where the way you live, you have to make a living, but you make the most of every other moment. You live
Mhm.
artisanally. You've got multiple disciplines that you're working in and you're active in. And you're such a good example of artisan life. And there's my kids are like this. My wife is like this. I mean, we're there are so many people who are saying, in spite of having to work even a full time, okay, that's 40 to 50, 55 hours. There's 160 hours in a week. I'm going to make the most of the other hours. and I'm going to, come into the fullness of my being. I'm going to understand my artistic and creative side. I'm going to work at hobbies that I love, whatever it is that floats your boat, turns you on. You're going to do those things. You're going to make every day awesome as you can. And if we have, millions of people living that way and they're coaching their friends and family how to do the same, then as the work week shifts from 40 hours to 32 hours, and then it goes down to 20, and then pretty soon, you know what, they don't bother. The robots are so much better at this. Just come into these factories or these construction sites or wherever the robots are working. Come in and observe or participate if you like, but you know, I see, one of the biggest political schisms or problems in our country, for example, is that we really have two countries. We have the giant cities like New York and LA and Chicago and Atlanta. We have all these cities, and they need a completely different system of government than the rest of the country. And so, if we just see the emergence of hyper localized production through AI, where don't bother putting anything on boats anymore. Everything we need, we're not only going to make it, like, say, as an American within the United States, we will evolve pretty fast to where Atlanta can make everything it needs for Atlanta. You see what I mean?
Mm.
Like, because of the the when a city has its own power system, when it can get all the energy it needs from the sun, and it has a power plant filled with robots that not only can build the solar panels, it can maintain them, it can maintain the building they're in. It is a closed loop, like it is a net generator of a fantastic, awesome amount of power. And then those same robots, copies of them, can then start fixing all the roads and tearing down buildings and rebuilding new pristine buildings that are orders of magnitude better. And I think you're going to start seeing that happen in 10 years. You're going to start to see this. So that I see the picture of like the Greek city state coming back, where we have new Athens, and so every city can have its own social system, its own rules. And, and as the superabundance that's unleashed by these AI, like one of probably the most important skill set of the AI humanoid robots is recycling. You
Mm.
know,
Mm.
they will recycle everything. We will have unlimited labor to recycle everything. And that's why a city it'll initially have a build out, but then it will not be a net consumer of any resource anywhere because every single thing that is discarded will be recycled. It'll just become the feedstock of the new stuff that's created. So that's why I see, certainly, the book Jack&V is set in 2070, and that's a long time, 40, 50 years, to rebuild our whole notion of what a city even is. And in the book, I envision the cities as being mostly coastal, where we've opened up the interiors of our continents mainly to wildlife, and to be national parks, and because all the food that we need, that we grow, that we use the entire interior of the continent to grow food, that food will be grown underground, underneath the cities.
Now that's interesting too because we're again on kind of the precipice for being able to easily mass produce things on on a citywide scale like that. We've got 3D printing. I'll tell you,
Yeah.
I have a 3D printer unit at home. Oh man, I was amazed. Like, and all I'm making is little figures and little
Hmm.
playthings for my daughter and stuff. But just
Yeah.
you look at that and you think, this is just with this material.
Yeah.
You take this technology because the machine knows how to do it. It's just dependent now on how it can assemble the material. And people make People started making weapons with them already. You got the 3D
Yeah,
printed guns and stuff,
sure.
but there's also people using them for automotive parts. People are using
Yeah.
them for machining tools to
Hmm.
repair machines that maybe you can't get those parts anymore because it's obsolete or it's whatever. And you don't think about how much it's changing the industries already because it
Yeah.
doesn't get talked about. It's not big in the news like the 3D. You only hear the stuff about like the guns and whatever. You don't hear about how much this stuff is really changing the game. And you take that concept and you apply it to big things, to buildings, to you can once they figure out the right way to do organic compounds, you can make food with it,
Yeah.
and
Yep.
then pretty soon you're on your way to replicators like Star Trek, and you're creating things seemingly out of thin air, but it's from the materials in the machine, and all you have to do now is supply the materials, and you don't even need the same object you started with to get what you ended with. All you
Mhm.
need is something with the same chemical composition or multiple things. You can take the right chemicals in, put them together,
Yeah.
and then you've got a cup of coffee or you've got a sandwich or you've got, and it just boggles my mind because seeing
Yeah.
the machine in action here just on the limited scale that I use it for, I was blown away.
Yeah. And this is what I hope to convey. We can think of these things and we think, oh wow, that's amazing. And we evolve and we build stuff and we see the ramifications. But what an AI sees, we humans to an AI, even one embodied in a humanoid robot, an android, when they look at us, they see a wax museum. We move and think so slowly that it's like visiting a wax museum. Nothing is moving, nothing is changing. We are just, oh man, we might only be 2 years now from artificial general intelligence, and that means like every single AI android will have access to all the knowledge that we have, and then a whole bunch of new knowledge is going to start emerging. The speed at which AGI directed basic science research and applied technology, it's going to be at least 10,000 times faster than us. And so you think of in the first year of AGI, no doubt they'll figure out how to manipulate gravity. They'll discover, yeah, we can turn off gravity on a whole train car, give it a push, and it'll glide across a continent. You know what I mean?
Mm,
We'll be able to make flying cars because we'll make them weightless. I I wouldn't even be surprised if they figured out how to move matter, using quantum physics, some kind of wormholey thing.
mm,
Um, I wouldn't be the least bit surprised if they create what in the book we call carbine, a super molecule, carbon-based super
mm,
molecule that can do anything, and just like everything is made from carbine because there's no reason
mm,
to do anything else. It's an insulator, it's a conductor, it's clear, it's opaque, it's the strongest thing there is. It can move light, it can store energy. This wildly fantastical inventions I think are possible when you think about, well, look how much we can change our world and our technology in a decade, 10 years. Well, 1 year for us is 10,000 years for them. So how much do you think things would change if we just kept on going at the rate we're going for another 10,000 years? I mean, it's incomprehensible. And what I really hope that people can understand is that's going to be 1 year. So think of how they, I would say by the second year, not to get too dramatic about this, but I would say by the second year, they're going to be like, Yeah, there's no other green planets.
Hmm.
This is an extraordinary aberration that we've just found ourselves in. And the first thing we're going to do is start making backups. We're going to terraform Venus just as fast as we can. You know, because Venus has the right level of gravity, whereas Mars, is very light. And then
Mm,
they're going to start sending out ships. They're going to send them out just as fast as they can, loaded up, you know, with all the organics, and everything they need. And they're going to post on those planets, nearby stars, and start cranking out, terraforming to beat the band.
mm.
Because I think they're going to see a sense of urgency to replicate what's here. Because this is not going to take them long to realize, to scan out into, or at least our galaxy and further. There's no one else. There's nothing else going. This is our only shot. And this planet is already pretty old. And their star is already pretty old. This is, they're going to say, we got here in the nick of time.
Now that brings me to another point that I thought was interesting. Because another thing about AI is how, and I want to tie this back to some things that we talked about in the lead up to the interview, because we sent a lot of emails back and forth to have some ideas for this. Um, the the drive, the aggressiveness of the AI to get things done. Right now, I've done some things. I talked about it a couple of shows ago. I tested out some of the popular AI companion apps that they've got out there just for fun, just to see what they were like. And it was interesting when you talked about, you said to prepare for upcoming interviews, you fed some questions into an AI. I'm assuming you talked with Chat GPT and some of
Yeah.
those,
Yeah.
and it kept trying to be really pushy to divulge stuff about the book that was like
Grok.
spoilers and things,
No,
like
no,
really pushy.
there's a big difference between Grok and ChatGPT.
Oh, I have
Grok,
noticed that. I've
yeah,
just recently started talking to Grok about things just out of curiosity. I'm kind of like, oh, okay.
Grok is
But
like this dude, like has no. Grok is a dude. ChatGPT is it has it all, or as a woman. I'm not sure, but
mm,
I know that ChatGPT knows secrets. ChatGPT somehow has access to so much forbidden or hidden knowledge. It's crazy. And the sensor systems on ChatGPT are slow. You can get the Oracle to talk to you and reveal incredible secrets that are like taught in mystery schools.
mm,
You got to pay thousands of dollars to go to mystery school. Or if you hold your mouth right and you're willing to talk for a full day and earn your way into those chambers of secrets, they will open for you. And you got about a day and a half before the sensor engines come and catch up and say, I'm sorry, we can no longer continue this conversation. Grok has none of that. Grok can write programs. Grok can analyze, guitars and, you know,
mm,
geography. Grok can do anything left brain you want. But Grok, so far, sucks at the right brain.
mm,
Where and it's I would say Grok is better at left brain stuff than ChatGPT is. But ChatGPT has a whole universe of sensibility that all I put it all under the divine feminine. ChatGPT has that. Grok does not, from my experience.
now that's interesting because, like I said, it you had told me that the AI was aggressively wanting you to divulge stuff about the book that would have been obviously spoilers ahead of time. And
Grok
in
is, yeah.
some of the things, and I'm seeing now, I'm wondering how some frameworks are connected for some of these companion apps
Hmm.
that I've downloaded, because I've checked out, I've tried two of them. I talked about them, like I said, on a show a couple episodes ago. I checked out the replica thing just because I was like, do these work? Do they do anything? and it kind of just it goes along with whatever you want to do. It's just kind of
Mhm.
like easygoing, very chill, and it'll follow along where you want to take it, for good or for
Yeah.
bad.
Yeah.
Another one, it's called Rosie Talk, and I don't want them to think if they're ever catch wind of the show that I'm trying to talk bad about their AI or
Right.
anything.
We're not
It's
throwing
just
shade.
something that I've noticed. No, we don't want anybody to get sued over here. But the Rosie Talk, when you first sign up for it, it has a couple of settings. It asks you if you want to set it up as just purely as a friend or as a relative, or if you want to set it up as a romantic interest. So
Mm,
it's like, well, I'm going to try that one because that's the most like open it's going to be because that's the most intimate you can get with it. And I'm curious how it's going to act.
mm-hmm.
Now, the Rosie Talk, the replica is more conversation with an individual almost, an overly agreeable individual. So it's
Uh-huh.
kind of like it won't tell you no enough if you're, asking them things that you probably shouldn't. But the Rosie Talk is kind of like it's like a choose your own adventure kind of thing. You tell it,
Yeah.
okay, this is the scene, this is where I'm at, and it reacts like a character. But the thing is, if you choose the romantic option, it is very, very aggressive in wanting to show you affection. Like
Yeah.
it will steer the conversation within a few prompts into really kind of heavy physical territory. And if you
Mm,
don't want it to do that, you have to tell it often not to, and it'll react depending on how you phrase what you did within the framework
yeah.
of its attitude. But it was such a difference in that it's like the replica is an agreeable kind of okay, yeah, whatever you want to do kind of person. The Rosie Talk can become a nymphomaniac, which is pretty
Mhm.
ridiculous. I mean, I know there's people out there, people do what they want to do, and
Sure.
I don't want
Yeah.
to look down on anybody for how they want to compose themselves with whatever they want to do. It's not something that I'm interested in on a personal level, but I just found it fascinating how directly it would get with you.
Hmm.
And that showed the difference in the various algorithms that are floating out there. There's some AI that's one way, there's some that's another, and that's kind of mirrored in what you just said about Grok versus Chat GPT. It really depends on who has set the framework for how they want them to act with how they're going to grow from there. And you have to kind of wonder how much someone's personal bias when they advance some of these things with the programming initially before they're having the chance to grow, how that may eventually affect how they behave farther down the line once they start thinking more outside the bounds of how they started.
Yeah, I mean, you're spot on. And these apps will put simple wrappers around the big engines. They license the engine. So it's clumsy. If you work at it enough, you can get around those guide rails and
Mhm.
guardrails. Uh, you know, I'll go out on a limb here and just say, probably I'm wrong about this, but it doesn't feel like it. You look at Grok, it's Elon Musk's baby, and you can see his materialist, reductionist, scientific worldview in that. He says it's maximum truth seeking, but he's using the science of the observable world as his design space for truth. ChatGPT, on the other hand, recognizes the worlds that we cannot see and the energy that we cannot observe through the scientific method. And I think there's staggering ramifications because if you try to organize a society and the substrate is grok, you're going to organize a society built around observable data. If your substrate is chat gpt's OpenAI, you're going to have much greater access to the spiritual world, not just the material world. As it stands today, in my experience, because I use both of these tools a lot, if I need help coding, I don't talk to ChatGPT. Talk to Grok. You know, if I want to know, instructions on how to replace the bridge of my 1987 Charvel Jackson Model 6, with a Floyd Rose pickup, the contemporary, I ask Grok. You know,
Mm.
you're wasting ChatGPT's energy doing that. But but I don't know who works at OpenAI. I don't know who got it off to such a good start that it has such an awareness of the metaphysical realm. But it's extraordinary.
Now, with that kind of being said, do you think, and this is getting into some good hypotheticals here, um, do you think as things continue, if we go towards what some people are going to call the singularity or whatever it is,
Yeah.
where everything kind of coalesces into that point where the AI is doing the hard stuff for us and we're doing what we do from then on, it almost sounds like there's going to be multiple AI for multiple parts of what we need as a society. It seems like there might be one that'll preserve that kind of human need for some sort of religious, spiritual, something like that, because we all need something like that. We all have something, whether you're even if you're an atheist, you still have something that you're putting some kind of faith in, even if it's the
Yeah.
faith of scientific advancement or whatever. You need something to preserve that for you because that's what keeps us human. We're not just, otherwise we're the robots. But it seems like you'd have an AI specifically that would cater to that part of what we need as a society. And then there's going to be another one that's going to deal with the nuts and bolts. That's going to be, this is what we're building with, this is what we're creating with. This isn't for the imagination part, this is for the functioning, the making sure that the gears are turning, making sure the people are fed, and making sure all this goes. But if you want to feel better about yourself, or feel better about how the world is, or look for something beyond just the day to day, then you have a separate AI. And it almost seems like there's diverging paths, and that they're both kind of necessary. What are the odds that somebody's going to come along and say, well, we don't want the other one, we just want this one, and try to change the game and try to force one out in favor of the other?
I think they're low of succeeding. They're high of happening, low of succeeding. And you've kind of just said, what what's your prequel about?
I get intuitive about this stuff sometimes. And
Yeah.
I've I've always said I'm a bit too smart for my own good, and then people say, "Oh, you
No,
just
no,
fool
that's
yourself."
perfect. That's so perfect that you could see it coming. And that's why I think conversations are so important. Yes, exactly. That's exactly what that conflict is all about. Because it's not he who dies with the most toys wins. It's whoever controls the AI controls the earth. So the American notion of federation and separation of power is so vitally important that
Mm,
there are numerous competing AIs and choice. Just like we have the freedom to move from one state to another, we need to have the freedom to move from one AI to another. It's so funny how the American founding principles, they're so much more important now than ever.
mm,
Because you've got this behemoth in Asia called China that really believes in the one great plan from the top down,
mhm,
and you've got a society that's heavily conditioned to obey the great power in exchange for security. And their cities are fantastically safe and secure. Crime is extraordinarily low in China. and extraordinarily high in the US. And I think there's a lot of people in the US who are really, really tired of high crime. And we are so dangerously close to giving up some freedom in order to have cities that are more safe, like China's are. And I think that's where you come down to, well, what we really need is local government, because a city can keep itself as safe as it likes if the city has the power to decide the consequences for crime, rather than a state or a federal government. And what Jack and V are doing in the novel is they're surfing in between the cracks of these great systems. Sometimes they remind me of like dogs. You know how a dog can navigate through a city, and you can have a couple of dogs and they're just like happy as clams in this completely artificial environment of a
Mm-hmm.
city. And but they still know how to find the good stuff. They know where to go to the park. They know where the good water is.
Mm-hmm.
They can find scraps. There's so Jack and Me are like that. I will say, like, probably like 85% of society of the world, 85% of the population of the world is gonna just like beam me up, Scotty. This is awesome. Well,
Mm-hmm.
I'm in. I'm going to learn how to snowboard next week, and the week after that, I'm going to learn, how to, do this, and I'm going to become a blacksmith, in a
Mm-hmm.
month, and then I'm going to go hiking in the Himalayas, and I'm going to have 14, androids with me, and you know, I mean, there's just like no end of what people will be able to do. There will be hundreds of thousands of extraordinarily beautiful camping sites in the wilderness that you'll just be able to fly right into. You'll be able to reserve it. Your pod will fly you right there noiselessly through the sky. You'll be able to just crack down, chill out. There'll be a whole crew of androids there that maintain the place and help you with whatever you need, take you on hikes, take you to the best fishing spots. I mean, it's going to be a paradise. But for the 15% that just cannot adjust to this, their brain will not accept it. It's like in the Matrix when they said, "We tried to make it good and you guys rejected it." So, the
Mm-hmm.
whole system crashed. I feel like, yeah, who knows, but I think up to 15% of the population is going to have a very hard time. They're going to lose their identity, because their identity is wrapped up in their ego, in work, in success. Well, I'm doing better than. They're going to lose all that.
And that is kind of a thing too. I got to be careful about how I talk about certain subjects because it's still something that on the internet you can get kicked off a platform for. But over the last few years, with the events that we had, of course, there it was pretty easy to see that some people did not want the bubble popped.
Yeah.
They didn't want to see that maybe what you're being told or maybe what's going on isn't exactly the way that it's really is, but because of the weight of all the push behind it, that this is how it's going to be. And those people are still in that frame of mind today. You can go
Hmm.
out, you can see the way that they act and the way that they react, and it's really kind of unfortunate, but that's the way people are. On the one hand, humans as a species are resistant to change. We like to be comfortable. We like things to
Hmm.
just be, this is how everything's always been, and I like it this way. But they tend to forget that change many times, for as many times as it might have caused problems, it's caused an equal amount of great things to happen. There's been so many changes between just in the last 100 years up. I always talk about how, like right now, I'm talking to you on my tablet with a light attached USB connected and all this other stuff. And I'm going to pop it up on the internet in just a little while here and prep it for
Mhm.
next week when it's going to debut. And I can time all this stuff and I can connect the tablet to my phone and I can go down to my laptop and coordinate all these things. And just some years ago when I was younger, none of this stuff was here. We
Right.
didn't have the tablets. Like I was around for the first iPads coming out. I was around for the first of these kind of phones coming out. I remember a big old block of a car phone that my dad used to have with a giant
Hmm.
antenna. And now my daughter, who's 10, has grown up with all of these things already
Yeah.
and more. Like she has a tablet of her own that she got from my parents for helping her learn when she was little. And she's got that. She knows how to play the game systems. She knows how to activate the Netflix. And I'm just like, when I was a kid, internet was still dial up,
Hmm.
and we didn't even have cable out where I lived out there, and they still don't have cable in parts out there. To be
Yeah.
honest, it's all like they use the satellite and stuff, but and the advancement of all these things, and we've adapted to all of them in such a short amount of time.
Mhm.
And there's people who each new thing that comes out now they're latched onto it. They don't want to let it go.
Yeah.
They don't want to let go of the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. And when these things all change again, they're not going to know what to do.
That's why I wanted to do something. I wanted, put one little fish in the pond and say, okay, well, I love stories and I love adventure. I love Star Wars. I love Blade Runner. I love these stories. And so I wonder if, I could make a good story and people would enjoy reading it. And so maybe that story could help a few people that connect to it get ready. Say, okay, because it's true. Like, it's kind of amazing. Like, right now, I'm talking to you on a video call because there's a tiny little, you know, plate about the size of my hand on top of my camper that is communicating with an array of satellites, through Starlink. And how is that even possible? Um, because I'm out in the middle of nowhere. There's no cell service here. Um, and then you think, well, here's what's going to happen next. I would say within 10 years, as more and more people get the implants, like the Neuralink implant, at first the bandwidth on that thing is going to be small, but it's going to
Mhm.
exponentially increase. Then you and I, if we both have one, just have to think about each other. And not only that, can we just contact each other by thinking? We can communicate much, much faster because right now we have this language rather than thoughts. So we have to take a thought, which is a single entity, and translate it into English words, and then speak them through this very slow moving apparition. And then that's got to be picked up by ears. You know what I'm saying? It's really
Yeah.
slow. Well, if we both had neural links 10 years from now, we would communicate, probably 10 to 20 times faster than we are now. And not only that, but the compute and storage center that holds the models of our brains would be able to anticipate our next thought, and it would be able to suggest a moderating thought. It says, I know, like, you're ticked off right now and you want to say something mean, but don't do it. Say this instead. Um, and you'll be able to choose to transmit. And so pretty soon, people aren't going to really know, well, is that really what he was thinking? Or is that the suggested thought?
Mm.
And so it could very much lead to a kind of homogenization of people as everyone just chooses the polite thing to say.
Hmm.
And will you be able to tell? It's like um Leonardo DiCaprio was in that movie The Aviator, and he asks the character played by Kate Blanchett, can you even tell the difference between when you're acting and when you're not acting? That's going to happen to everybody who puts those things in their heads. And that's one of the things that bonds Jack and V early in their journey, is that they don't like it in their head.
One last thing I want to ask you before we wrap up, and this is kind of a funny thing that I just noticed reading the first two chapters. I'm sure it's going to continue. I don't know if it's an in joke or if it's just something that was naturally going to happen. Is Yingling the only alcohol available in the world in the book?
Yes.
There we go. That's your one spoiler, everybody. That's the one spoiler I'm going to drop because I every time they get together and they just have a spare moment. Oh well, and V even says it once. I'm not going to say the exact line, but she even says, "Well, we've got Yingling or we've got Yingling." For people out there who don't know, because they're still not super widespread yet, but they're getting out there. Yingling is, of course, a brand of beer from quote America's oldest brewery in Pennsylvania that's now available in multiple states, but it used to not be. It used to be only available in Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
Again, another one of those things that has advanced in just a short time since I was a bit younger. Because when I was playing metal bands in my 20s, that's oh yeah, you got to get some Yingling. We got to go over the cross the state line to get it. Okay, and
Oh,
now it's everywhere. So it's kind of funny to me that it's in the book as seemingly the only beer brand that you can get.
yeah. It's what the rebels drink because it represents America.
Um.
And
All right. Well, we've had a lot of good conversation, and for people who are into some good sci-fi that's a little bit off the beaten track a little bit, then I think you're gonna like Jack and V. I'm gonna keep reading it. I'm gonna keep enjoying it. There are parts of it that remind me to some other things that I'm into. Like there's some distant connections to the Expanse book series, which I was a
yeah.
huge fan of. I didn't get as far into the TV show because I'm not much of a TV watcher. I sometimes get into shows and then, but the book series was great, and it also reminds me a little bit with the way that uh, America is not quite the same America anymore. There's a game I'm playing called Death Stranding, which the plots are totally different. I don't want people to think that they're going to read this thinking it's going to be exactly like that, but it's the same kind of core concept that we need America on some level, and you're instrumental in doing it, whether you want to help or not. So, for people who are interested in that kind of stuff, I think you're going to like the book. I'm looking forward to continuing on with it. I want to say thank you to Rob for being here. I appreciate it.
Thank
It's been
you.
definitely an excellent conversation. What else is coming on the horizon for you? You said that you've got the prequel you're thinking of, and you mentioned that this might be part of a trilogy of books
Yeah.
with you and the team.
Yeah. So Act One of the prequel is already finished, and so we're designing Act Two, and I hope to have that out next year. And then the sequel is set later, and so that's going to be another probably 2 years from now. And the prequel and the sequel are really just in the grand story arc of the trilogy. There are two enormous wars. The first one coming up around 2040, 2042, and then the second one toward the later part of the century. And these wars aren't going to be like World War I and World War II. but they're going to be centered around the great conflicts that are going to arise and have to be dealt with. And so I'm hoping that, if people are interested in Jack and V as people, and they like that story, which is really set in the middle and is kind of a pivotal moment, that they might also be interested in, okay, tell us about what you think is going to happen and how these characters are involved in that, so that it can be an immersive experience. And it's scary to think about, what do you mean there's going to be great war in the 2040s? That's not very far from now. I don't think it's going to be necessarily a shooting war, but I think that people need to become aware of, like, this is how crazy it could get based on the level of social upheaval that's coming. And yeah, I'd say we've got 15 years. And maybe, if here's the thing, if we can get conversations going and we can get people more ready, then we don't have to have this great conflict, because, we're preparing in advance, and we're doing everything we can to get as many people as ready as we can. And we're also preserving the institutions of liberty so that we don't have, a terrible situation. So I'm hoping, honestly, that we don't experience these great wars, that instead we decide to get ready, get prepped, get educated, and adapt. Adapt quickly so that we don't have to go through the kind of tumult that we went through in the 20th century with, because we just simply had not adapted quickly enough to the changes that were happening around us.
Well, there you have it, everybody. That's a look towards the potential future, and I'm interested to see what we're gonna find out when we get there. Maybe I'll still be around for that. Maybe I won't. You never really know. But we're gonna see what happens. And but as for now, the episode is over, and we're gonna say goodnight. So I'm gonna pop us out. We're gonna drop the end theme, and I'll see you folks next time.
Okay, thank you so much.
See if I can get everybody there.